Hello and welcome to AXSChat. We're delighted to be joined today by Martyn Sibley. It's been too long. I think we've been 5 years too long almost, Martyn. You should have been here with us from day one. Martyn is the founder of Disability Horizons and also very well-known figure on social media talking about travel and disability and engagement of the community. So it's great to have you with us. Tell us a little bit more about Disability Horizons and your background and how you started travel blogging and engaging in the whole business around travel and access.
Sure. Well, yeah, first of all, thank you for having me. It's great to connect with you all. Obviously, we've all interacted online and offline in the past, but it's amazing to be on AXSChat. I suppose the first part of the answer is I have a disability called spinal muscular atrophy. So I'm always in my power wheelchair. I can't walk at all. I rely on a full team of carers PA carers to get around and do all the daily living tasks and just to get out of bed. Every day there are barriers that I've always had to contend with and really, still do in my mid-30s. But equally, I've got a zest for life. I love, looking for the positives. I love a challenge. I love travel and entrepreneurship. So I think all those themes have always run through my life. And obviously with the rise and the power and the empowerment of social media and digital blogging, all that sort of stuff, I was able to just put out my very individual personal story, and different people take different things away from my content and my message. But through sort of playing around with blogging for well over 10 years now, after a year or two, that turned into the magazine and the online community, which is Disability Horizons. So we've got 60,000 readers each month now, and great content from the community, great interaction. And then that's obviously eventually worked its way into a business as well. So we have partners on Disability Horizons around inclusion. And I've been lucky to go around the world and have a great, sort of time traveling and blogging, but all the time very much about spreading that message of inclusion and just having a good time while we're changing the world.
Excellent. Thank you. And obviously travel is a little bit more difficult right now because of the COVID-19 and the various different restrictions that are quite rightly in place to stop the spread of this new pandemic that we're all facing now. So how are you coping with being restricted in your movements?
Crazy times, right? It's the whole world is upside down at the moment. It would be nice to think that people watching this or listening to this episode in the future, it will be something that happened and we're all through it and we're back to normality. But at the moment, it's quite scary, unknown times. On a very personal level, I was due to get married at the end of May in Poland. So we've had to postpone our wedding. So it's having a very real impact on our life. And the thought of just not being able to go to other cities, other countries is something I've always, particularly in spring and summer, as we're just getting into now in the UK, I've always really gone for more than when I'm in the winter. So it's definitely going to be a different few months to an average year. But I suppose, with that positivity that I always try to look for, I think, there are going to be other ways of staying healthy, other ways of connecting with people, other ways of, staying sane and staying positive. And I think we're all just working that out at the moment, really.
Well, congratulations on your wedding at some point. That's cool. It's amazing the impact that this is having, and it's sort of, like you said, it's sort of scary. It will be interesting get past it. And I think we're going to learn a lot from it.
Yeah.
But congratulations on
Thank
at
you.
some point your nuptials, whenever that happens. But I know that you are engaged like we are as market influencers, and you're very engaged in the conversations of not only making sure that you are, your voice is being heard, but other people with disabilities' voices are being heard as well. And one thing that I know from our community is how resilient we are. And often people with disabilities are being put, they're often not included as much as we would really like them to be included. So what do you think, Martyn, that the rest of the world can learn from the community of people with disabilities during this COVID-19 and other pandemics that we're going to probably experience in the world?
Yeah, I think there's a lot. If we take three key themes like education, employment, and leisure as well, there's various things that the community have been calling out for years, like remote working, remote learning. And I saw someone the other day on the leisure front that cinemas are potentially going to release films early to home screenings rather than because people can't go to the cinema. And so I think whilst there's obviously a lot of fear and concern about how people with health conditions and the interaction with the virus is going on, I think the self-isolation and trying to live an everyday life from home, we've actually got this on lockdown. Like we've used the word lockdown in a different sense, but we've got this covered. So I think there's absolutely a lot that other people can learn from us in all those three areas, really.
And so give us some examples, because I think you're right, because often people with more severe disabilities, they know how to work from home. They know what to do things. One of my team members is Lamondre Pugh, and he's writing an article right now on how does he stay safe when he has caregivers coming in and out. And by the way, needs caregivers coming in and out to support him as well. So I just really think there's so many ways that we can show the knowledge and the wisdom that we've gained over many, many years from not really being included. And it's also, we've been saying for years, make your websites accessible, make your training accessible, make your education. We've been saying this for years. And now when the world goes home to work, we're starting to see the major gaps in what we've been complaining. I hate to use the word complaining, but we've been saying for years, this is an issue. We don't have access. We want to contribute. We want to participate. So, I just think the times are very interesting. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, I totally agree. There's so many different use cases and applications for that. I mean, I think right where we are at the moment, a lot of the community are just looking at the personal implications, as I said before, about the health and the sort of hygiene and all those types of areas. And as you touched upon, those that have PA carers that have to come in the home. So I think step one has just been health. Step two has been around independent living. But yeah, I mean, I think that, the way that most businesses that are able to have gone to remote working, and I've seen stuff online, people are, worrying about the work-life balance, that where are they going to, get fresh air if they're at home all day and all night, and then how they're going to do exercise and how they're going to have leisure time. So yeah, I think the disabled community can give advice even on, well, yeah, it's good to have a routine. These are the kind of softwares that are good for remote working. Think about, different ways of having that work-life balance while you're at home. And then when we come out the other side of this, it would be cool if that learning and that cultural shift ends up that businesses are more open and flexible to that for everybody, even if, things return to inverted commas normal.
I agree. And I think also the opportunity that we have, and I know that you work with a lot of market influencers that are individuals with disabilities, but I think that there's a real opportunity for our community to step up and say, well, let me tell you what I've learned through the many years that I've been at home where I've teleworked. Like my companies since 2001 have been teleworking. So we're really experts at it. It's what we do.
Yeah.
But at the same time, and most of my team members are people with disabilities, visible and invisible. And right, I said that right. And so yesterday for World Down Syndrome Day, for example, a young man with Down syndrome in New Zealand did a video talking to other people with Down syndrome and reminding them of, washing your hands and all the different things that we can do to stay safe. And I thought that was a beautiful video. And I'm hoping more people with disabilities are going to come out and be talking about lessons that we've learned, what we know, but at the same time, have some fun with these videos too. I think we could say, one thing, let me tell you how to take care of your hair or your makeup, or fun things, or, how do I keep myself occupied, during these times of social isolation, which most of us are not familiar with.
Yeah. And I think brands, that's separate to this place we're in at the moment with the COVID-19. I think, businesses and brands are becoming more and more aware of the need to be inclusive and to be social, and to, there's a time and a place for a bit of fun and entertainment. And then on the other side of it, as I've gone through blogging and we've built out our community and we're working with other disabled influencers, it's so awesome to see talented disabled people who are experts in beauty or in sports and different industries and different specialisms, and on Instagram and YouTube, that's the place you can have a bit of that light-hearted creativity. And we talk about funnels in sales. I think in the end there's an element around product acquisition, but most of all, people are from a core sort of capitalist profit side, but actually on the social side and the brand side, it's about people connecting with people and adding value. And I just love how almost these kind of different disciplines have gradually converged, and we've just got these beautiful ingredients to make some real change now.
Yeah. So I think that every cloud has a silver lining, and I do, like you, think that some of the changes that are being forced upon us right now as a society are being coped with best by a lot of people who have been doing this because of their disabilities for a long time. I've been remote working for 5 years now too, and in many ways, from a dyslexia, ADHD point of view, it works really well for me because there are less distractions here than there are in the office. I can actually work without the coffee machine grinding in the background, people talking behind me. Occasionally, my wife comes in and disturbs my meeting, but generally speaking, I'm used to it. Whereas, I'm on calls with my colleagues, and they're all like, oh God, or people from other companies, and they're all saying, oh, this is difficult, and actually, this is something that we're used to, that we're expert in. We do this because it helps us be our most effective. So I think that there's probably, but there are things that we need to do for our own well-being when you're working from home and you're remote. So I mean, one of the challenges is the social exclusion. So, for example, if you can't see people, one of the things that Antonio and I actually do quite a lot is we start by having a meeting, and we're talking away and we do our stuff, and then rather than actually sort of hang up when we finish the meeting, we just carry on working with the camera on and the line open. And it's the closest thing you've got to being in an office. You're tapping away, you're kind of just ignoring each other, working away in sort of almost silence, and then occasionally you sort of grunt and make a comment, and you've got someone, it's you don't feel as isolated when so there are things you can do like that. Okay, so with a caveat, because now that there are billions of people doing this, bandwidth permitting, because actually, our old boss, Thierry Breton, who was our boss at our employer, has now become the European Commissioner for Technology, has just gone and asked Netflix to turn down the quality of the video streaming because it's affecting people's the bandwidth, so because everyone's watching box sets. So
yeah, I saw that too.
Yeah, so I think it's interesting because there are all of these things that are going to have a fundamental impact on how we work, how we live, how we're going to do business in future. So, stuff that we've ignored, like the quality of our IT infrastructure, is suddenly going to be a much higher priority in future. How we, interact with each other and sort of virtually keep our social lives going is going to change. I mean, we've been doing it for years. All four of us on this call are expert at interacting and having a social life and being socially fulfilled without physical contact. I mean, physical contact is a benefit and it's a bonus, but it's not. We know how to take succor from social interaction that is remote. So people are going to have to learn that.
Yeah,
and I think that will be a benefit for everyone, and especially if we want the environment to improve, because we look at what's happening in Italy, terrible stuff happening in Italy, terrible stuff has happened in China, but there are dolphins back in the bay in Venice for the first time in decades. The waters are running clear. The pollution levels in parts of China vastly reduced. So we can see that by making changes to our lifestyle, actually nature repairs itself really quickly. So there are all of these other things that I think are potential side benefits. And I've digressed, and Antonio sat there listening, nodding his head quietly in the background. I'm going to shut up and let other people contribute to the conversation.
No, but there's something that I'm spending some time looking at reactions around the world, how people dealt with people who had to go outside to do their shopping, and because everyone is being asked to stay at home and only get out for a limited time to do basic things. And everybody is asking the elderly people to stay at home and just to go there for shopping. And there was an incident that I saw yesterday about a police asking an elderly person to go back to her house without the police realizing that that person was someone with dementia. And I think it's also important to create some awareness about the people, and especially for those who need to take care or need to take care of our security, to have some kind of try to be aware of the other person. It could be a disability, it could be dementia, in order to make sure that they treat everyone fairly and they consider that person as well. So and I think it's particularly important in the case of this conversation that police forces and authorities consider the needs of people with disabilities when they need to go out, and are able to inform people in their organizations to be more aware of that as well.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Antonio. And also, what we're seeing is there's a need for comms, because people with disabilities also need to be informed about the risks that they're facing. Often, people with disabilities are in the most vulnerable group, most likely to be most adversely affected by this virus. Not everyone. I don't think, being dyslexic and ADHD is going to put me in a high risk category, but at the same time, not getting the information about what I need to do to mitigate that risk in a format that I can absorb might put me at a greater risk. So it's not about physical risk, it's about environmental and societal causes of risk here. And I think that although some countries have been doing a really good job on high-level comms in terms of getting signers, getting caption video. There's also been a lot of information put out there that's really, really inaccessible. And so what can we do, and you know, how can we as a community share information in formats that work for us, and that make sure that we're, you know, removing as much risk as we can.
But at the same time, I've seen quite a grow in terms of, especially from the government side, in making press conferences and announcements as accessible as they can, something that we're not doing in the past for the same type of communication. So I've seen more countries using sign language in people when they're doing the press conferences, and I've seen then a lot of that information being posted online for people to be able to consume. So I've seen a grow and an interest. So people are more aware that they need to do that than ever before. So I hope that when this is gone, they still keep those practices, you know?
Yeah. What do you think, Martyn?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many interesting thoughts sparking off, but for me, the most fundamental point, I suppose, out of all of the chat and being able to talk with your audience today, it really comes back to one thing, which is speak to disabled people. We've just done a really comprehensive report for a client around digital accessibility. You know, we've gone into the market opportunity and the general barriers that disable people. And we had 4 experts come in from 4 segments of different parts of the disability community. But really the big outcome of that whole report around digital accessibility is just speak to disabled users, ask disabled people what from a website or from an app, but then like we're talking now, from the comms, you know, from the government, from whatever perspective of life. I think so often in the past, there's a sort of presumption of what disabled people may or may not need, but it's basic marketing principles. You speak to your audience about their needs and their wants, and you give it to them. And you said about the comms, I noticed they'd had the signers. I think in Italy particularly, I saw there was always a signer, and I haven't, from the bits I've watched online, seen a signer in the UK. And you know, there is a sizable community of British Sign Language users, and obviously worldwide, you know, other sign language users. So yeah, I think in the end, it's just back to let's ask all these different segments of the community, what is it you need? And then the solutions are not always that difficult as well.
I also think that we are seeing, you know, the headline comms become more accessible. But I think what I've also noticed is that there's a lot of people putting out new information in a hurry, and even organizations that have been good at doing accessible comms generally, because they're in a rush, they're forgetting to do it. So for example, I was looking at on the UK government website today, there's a COVID-19 hospital discharge service requirements plan. Quite important that it be accessible. It's an inaccessible PDF. Now, normally stuff that the UK government puts out is of high levels of accessibility. There's flowcharts with red and green, great for color blindness, and they're images with no description. And you think, you know, this is crucial stuff about people's lives. That you know, so let's please, that, you know, if you're creating these documents, think about, you know, just taking that extra 5 minutes to make sure it is accessible, because you know, this could be the difference between people living and dying.
Yeah, and you made the point, you know, of the cohort of people that are maybe not deemed as there's actually an interesting point about language here as well. So they're using the word vulnerable quite a lot, and we get the context in terms of, you know, vulnerable from the health sort of negatives of the virus. But when all this is done, I don't want to be known as one of the people in a vulnerable community. Like I've always said before, there's a talent, there's skill, there's ability, there's all the positives. I think the word vulnerable has a risk of unwinding some of that positive change we've created the last decade. So yeah, I think there's a lot around vulnerability, and maybe calling it, I think someone said the other day online, susceptible might be a better word. And we know what we can get sucked off in the language debate for way too long, and that's another matter. But yeah, back to your point earlier, Neil, I think, you know, even those that are not maybe as at risk individually, there's the social responsibility of your actions affecting other people. And as you say, if you can't actually consume that information, how can you be that responsible citizen that the government is asking you to be?
Yeah, I thought that actually the government of Argentina has done a nice job on some of this stuff. So they've got all kinds of different formats. So if you go onto their website, they've got you know, a video there with signing and captioned, and then they've got stuff in easy read and pictographic format. You know, pretty much. You know, I don't speak Spanish, but I can absolutely understand what they're telling me to do. Got a temperature, sore throat, difficulty breathing, then call the local service before going to the hospital. Yeah, it's really well done, and I think that clarity and simplicity of information and that willingness to put it out there and put it, and also they put it out under Creative Commons so anyone can use it, is really good, because we need to be sharing this stuff.
Yeah, and
it's great.
Just use an opportunity to talk about travel, because I may not, you know, as we said already earlier, I may not get to do that so much in the next month. So I'm just going to live off the memories for now. But I did a big trip around Europe on a European Commission project on accessibility. And we were in a couple of parts of Italy. I think it was around the Tuscany region. And there was a load of work had gone in to making things accessible to people with learning disabilities. And it was all to do with the sort of thing you're saying, that kind of images and pictures. And they found that it was actually really, really useful for people that didn't speak Italian. So all of the tourists benefited, even though it was originally made for a smaller community of disabled people. And we see that again and again with universal design and inclusive design, that when you design for a specific group's needs, you often end up making everyone better off for it.
Which is an excellent point. And I know here in the United States, we've talked a lot about the UK on the show, but you know, here in the US, we are, well, it really freaked me out yesterday to see side by side of Paris deserted and then Clearwater Beach being filled with hundreds of thousands of young people, because this is an old people disease. So, you know, the racism, the misinformation, that once again, the vulnerable and things like that. I think all of that is troubling. But at the same time, I will sort of want to go in a little different direction, because I see corporations, some corporations are really starting to step up and say, what can we do? How do we help? How do we help? I'll give a shout out to Amazon, because Amazon is hiring 100,000 more workers, and people are being laid off and losing their jobs in the US, and they're doing it to help people stay safe. But it's also good for our economy that, you know, these jobs are going to be available. And excuse me, they increase the salary, the base salary, $2. So it's $17 instead of $15, which a lot of people in caregiving jobs and lower level jobs, I don't mean it in a negative way like that, but in certain jobs, you know, that we're just paying them terrible money. So I applaud the efforts. And I had some people making nasty comments because people are mad at Amazon because they're big. Well, whatever. But there are other companies. I see Google doing some really, really incredible things. I see that, you know, I've seen Clorox donated $5 million to try to help people. And there's many, many other brands stepping up saying, what do we do? How can we help? How do we help our own employees? How do we help during these crises? And I was just wondering, Martyn, are you seeing things like that? And maybe Neil and Antonio, I mean, I'm seeing corporations try to step up, and I think there's probably ways that we can help them step up more. And once again, hopefully the benefits that we get because of all this crisis, that it stays. But I'm also, as Neil had pointed out, and you both had pointed out, we're seeing very well-known mediums, and I'm not going to do, one is in my mind, and it's a US one that, they're putting out these emergency things and they're not captioned and they're not accessible. And that hurts all of us. So, stop doing that. But at the same time, I also am seeing some corporate brands really stepping up. And so I was just curious if y'all have been seeing that and what your comments were on that as well, Martyn. And I know there's others that we could, champion, but it's just a real scary time.
Yeah, no, I think, from our day-to-day work with brands on influencer campaigns, obviously there's been a pause because the priority isn't, as we said earlier, just product acquisition. There's a whole bigger situation to be very, very sensitive to. But I think there are brands that have just genuinely and authentically stepped up. I heard that, I think it was Louis Vuitton are going to make hand sanitizer. I can't remember the details of if they're like selling that and what price, but essentially they're doing it not for profit. They've just got the facilities to be able to help create for the new demand in hand sanitizer. There was a thing about needing more ventilators, and there was a car company that are going to transfer some of their factory capabilities to help there. And there's a load of different brands that have offered our NHS, our healthcare workers, freebies or discounts because of just applauding them for all the amazing work they do. So I think there's absolutely a space for businesses to step up. It doesn't have to be opportunistic. It shouldn't be opportunistic. I think it has to be from the right place. But yeah, it's uncharted time at the moment, and it's great to see people stepping forward and helping with acts of kindness.
So, Martyn, we have been in a positive tone here, and I hope we're able to maintain that. But is there anything at this moment that particularly concerns you, and you write, well, we're not doing enough here, and some people might be at risk? What have you seen there that you say, well, we really need to tackle this problem to make sure that people are not being left out?
Yeah, that's a really important question. I mean, just to reflect my journey the past week, I am very worried about contracting the virus because I would struggle to cope with it. So I've had to make changes around, washing hands, which is quite difficult from my wheelchair. So just practically there. And we touched upon the healthcare, and the social care. So I still have people coming in my house to help me to bathe or to cook or clean. So there's obviously risks and implications. There are people that are worried if there's a really bigger lockdown, how does that affect the movement of the workforce of personal assistants to get to people's houses? People that live in residential homes, there's obviously other similar but different implications. Mental health, as Neil touched upon earlier, is a massive thing of, okay, I work from home anyway, but I also do like to go off to some meetings and to travel in the better, warmer season. So there's a mental health thing around social isolation. And I think also just when we look at government decisions and government policy, we've touched on the communications already, but yeah, are those decisions factoring in every part of the life of disabled people and the healthcare and the social care? And I think with businesses, in a weird way, if people are able to work from home, that one's been slightly easier to adjust to. Obviously, if you can't work from home, it's a different matter. But no, I mean, there's a lot of people scared and there's a lot of questions. And I think for me, positivity is a value or a philosophy because it helps power you forward in times of difficulty as well. But it's not to overlook the fact that it's scary and there are days people will feel sad, and it's fine to feel sad. It's a human emotion and we should be with that as well. But yeah, there's lots of things. And I think the more the days and weeks go on, there'll be newer challenges, particularly around the economic impact as well, that may have effects.
I'll tell you something that I've started worrying about is the rural communities, because I'm in a rural community here in Virginia, and nobody delivers food to our home. I mean, they just don't do it because we're really outside the normal areas. And I have been thinking about it, and I haven't done any study. I don't know if any of y'all know about it, but I'm just concerned, what about the people that are in the rural areas? You know, how are we going to make sure that, you know, they're staying safe and we're able to deliver things to them? It's something I've just started thinking about, and I need to go out and research it. But I was just wondering if any of y'all had heard anything about that, because and I shouldn't say easy, that's not the right word, but you know, you can get food deliveries and stuff in the crowded areas, but what if you are like, you know, someone like in a real rural area and you don't have options? I worry about those people. I think that's where communities and neighbors and things like that come into play. But I was just wondering if any of y'all, Martyn and Neil and Antonio, if y'all had heard anything about that, just the things that we're worrying about.
Yeah, I'll just say a quick thought and then pass over to Antonio. I think, so I live in a more rural area in Cambridgeshire, and one potential positive is the spread is potentially less because you're not all living in a closer area. But in terms of food delivery, we have, like, I think the next 2 or 3 weeks have been completely booked out on the major supermarkets for home delivery. So that is actually, you know, back to Antonio's question as well, that's another factor that people are quite scared about. But your point, Deborah, about community and rallying together, there's been WhatsApp groups of neighbours and people putting leaflets through the doors to offer help to deliver food. So yeah, pros and cons to both, I think.
What I've seen so far in my region is governments are engaging with the main supermarket chains and with unions to make sure that the supply chain is not being disrupted, and they are treating those employees in a kind of a priority of movement, so they have freedom of movements to go to work, to keep all things going, and they are basically also asking the supermarkets to keep the supplies to everyone, and at the same time that they are asking people not to buy too much and to keep going to the shops more on a regular basis than just accumulating all the goods that, like we have seen all over social media, where people just go there and buy half of the supermarket. So they're asking people to have some conscience in relation to how they buy, at the same time asking the support of the supply chains to make sure that they keep people fed without, especially in the most popular goods, to make sure that that is not disrupted. And I hope that won't affect rural communities. But here in Portugal, all the supermarket chains, they are somehow have some links with rural communities where they have smaller supermarkets, but I'm sure that's not the same everywhere.
Yeah, yesterday on Twitter, or I think it was on Twitter, I saw a woman that had so much toilet paper in her living room that she had built a fort and her kids were climbing through it. And at first people were like, oh, you go, that's so creative. And all I could think was, oh my God, why are you hoarding? And then of course those comments started coming in and I left the feed. I didn't say anything, but it was like, she was bragging about that she had hoarded so much that she was entertaining her children. And I was like, wow, that's a terrible message to send to your children. Anyway, sorry. Yeah. I just wanted to say that.
No, one thing on top of what Antonio said is that there's been, obviously there's been the loo roll, and I think the pasta was another item that went, but a particular product that many disabled people need are around healthcare, like the plastic gloves and the aprons and the masks as well. So I've been struggling to find that online, let alone local shops. That's been difficult. But I know that a lot of supermarkets are on about opening the first hour or two for older and disabled shoppers, so they're able to get the food that they need before it goes crazy with the masses. And that was another positive example of businesses being thoughtful for different communities.
Yeah, talking of businesses that are being thoughtful for our community, I need to say thank you to Barclays Access and Microlink and also to My Clear Text for helping us stay sustainable. It's been great chatting with you today, Martyn. I'm sure that we're going to have a really good Twitter chat. Let's keep everybody engaged and healthy, and stay safe, everyone. Have a good weekend.
Stay safe. Stay safe. Thank you, Martyn. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much.